I started back in 1998. I actually started my business before Google, to put it in perspective for a lot of people. I was at a point in my business that I was doing really good. To the outside world, I was very successful, but I was very cash poor. I always wanted to write a book since I was a kid. I never thought it was going to be a business book.
Welcome to Inspired by Success, the podcast where I deep dive into the mindset of successful entrepreneurs, CEOs, and thought leaders. Get ready to be inspired and gain valuable insights to unlock your true potential. Have you ever felt so drained and discouraged by the daily grind of running a business that you wanted to quit? Our guest today, Tanya Fox, the author of How to Collaborate, has been there. But those lowest moments sparked her biggest breakthroughs. Tanya is a passionate entrepreneur with over 25 years of experience in service, retail, and franchise businesses. What kept her going was realizing the power of collaboration. By leveraging it, she grew profits, built supportive relationships, and reignited her passion time and time again. She turned perceived failures into opportunities for growth and creativity. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Tanya Fox.
Hello. My gosh, I have to get you to write all of my intros. That was fantastic.
Your story is fascinating. Tell us about it and how you became the person you are today.
So I started back in 1998. I actually started my business before Google, to put it in perspective for a lot of people. Haven't quite mastered their growth like they did. But back then, newspapers and radio were kind of the thing. And I was at a point in my business that I was doing really good. To the outside world, I was very successful, but I was very cash poor. And I needed a way to be able to advertise because it was trying to get out there. I was very young when I started my business, so trying to be taken seriously was difficult at that time. And being a woman at that time was hard too. So I kind of fell into collaboration and I didn't really know what I was doing at the time. And it wasn't until, I kind of sat back and went, that worked really good. Like, let's try that again. And then I kept doing different things and trying to perfect it and play and failing a lot, that I sort of went, wow, there's really something to this. And then over the years, I sort of had this philosophy that I never wanted to grow up. I never wanted to figure out what I wanted to be. I always knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but I didn't want to kind of get stuck in one business. And so when opportunities would present themselves, like owning a retail and then going into a franchise business, I kind of jumped at them and I was like, let's just try a little bit of everything and kind of see where we'll land. And there was so much knowledge that came out of being able to do that and being flexible. But I think the biggest thing that allowed me to kind of become the person I am is having that flexibility to kind of go, I don't need to have it all figured out. And if something doesn't work, I'm just going to try something else, because the alternative for me is to go and get a 9-to-5 job. And for me and my personality, that just doesn't work. So there was always that drive to be like, that's okay. We can just do something else. We'll figure something else out. We got 3 days. Let's build something else. So it was really like getting stuck in a lot of trial and error and being in those failures and kind of getting stuck in the mud. That's where I found my success, which I know is not what anybody wants to hear, but it's the truth.
Tell us about some of the business ventures that you did. Like you mentioned franchise, and I'm personally curious because I want to become a franchisor as well. But tell us some of the challenges and what were the benefits, the flexibility of being your own boss. But can you tell us a little bit about some of the challenges that you had to go through as well?
Yeah. So the franchise business that we bought into was a bread distribution. So if you go to your local store, you buy a loaf of bread for your house, we were the ones who put it on the shelf. So the benefit of doing that is the structure and the sort of foundation was already built for you. So that was really nice to walk into because you didn't have to do all of that thinking, building the partnerships. That was kind of all there. And there was constantly somebody else doing it for you. And there was really good, for those that didn't have the background like we did as a previous business owner, they had courses that you could take to learn how to do bookkeeping and accounting and even marketing. And so there was all of that stuff that was sort of handed to you in a nice little like binder. Here's how to kind of be successful. Now, the downfall for us is that we were very motivated. So we couldn't grow as big as what we wanted to because the hierarching franchise couldn't keep up with us. So the ideas we had of gathering different routes, getting different trucks, getting employees, they just couldn't keep up with our ideas. So in that aspect, it became a little bit frustrating. And because the organization was so big, there was some things from our standpoint that we were like, you guys are making these decisions and not talking to the people that it's going to affect. So, for example, they were rerouting how everybody sort of drove, but they weren't talking to the drivers, right? So we were kind of like, what? Why aren't you going to the people who actually do this every single day and saying, hey, tell us how to do this, how to do it the easiest? So that was really frustrating in the moment. But as I look back on it, I realized that was really what spurred me to stop and listen to my employees more and really go to the people that were doing the work and saying, how can I make this easier? How can I make this easier on you? Is there a way that we can do this quicker? Because I didn't want them to feel that frustration that I did of going, why aren't you just doing it this way? Or why aren't you just putting a coupon on the bag? It just doesn't make any sense to us. So I feel that if you really want to kind of have your own business, but you want some structure around it and you're not really too sure how to do that, franchising businesses can be really good for that because they sort of have that built around it. So you still have a little bit of the freedom, but you still have that sort of mentor, hopefully, if they're a good franchisor, that will be able to kind of guide you through the growth. For us, it was just they couldn't keep up. It's bad to say, but it's true. We were just like, we just want to grow and we just can't get you to go as fast as we want to go.
Wow. And you mentioned like before that as well, the cash flow issues, because a lot of businesses do have cash flow issues. So do you have any tips as well for small businesses? Because you also mentioned that you wrote the book for the smaller businesses, the ones that haven't hit millions of dollars yet. So if you got any tips on financial management, cash flow management as well that you could share?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is the thing that probably nobody wants to hear, but your numbers are crucially important. And if you have a bookkeeper or an accountant hired, they are working for you. And what happens a lot, and I know this because I own an accounting company, I've done bookkeeping. That was kind of how I started in my first business, that people get scared. They get scared to ask, like, I don't understand what this statement means. You get a bunch of statements and reports, and you're like, I don't know. It kind of looks good. They're not saying anything. But don't be shy to ask questions and say, look, I don't understand what you sent me. Can you explain it to me? And asking questions of actually saying, especially to accountants, because I'm going to call them out on this, they're a little bad at saying, if you just did this, or if you kind of tweaked this, you could make some more profit. If your bookkeeper is not coming to you and saying, hey, I noticed like your electricity bill is kind of going up, or you're starting to pay more in utilities or phone bill, or this expense kind of seems to be growing. Is there a reason for that? These are things that they should be pointing out to you. So don't be afraid to ask questions because you're paying them to give you these answers, but sometimes they don't tell you if you don't ask. So asking these questions and paying attention to where your money is going is really important. And I will sit down once a month and go, what can I cut? What am I not using? And really taking a look at stuff because we all get caught in that. And I still do to this day where you're like, oh, I'm going to join this group or I'm going to join this organization or I'm going to pay for this magazine or whatever because I'm going to read it and it's going to do wonders for me. And then it's like a gym membership, right? Sits in your wallet and you're like, that's not doing what it's supposed to be doing. So really kind of paying attention to that every month and even asking. And if you hate doing it, like farm it out to somebody, but make sure you're saying to that bookkeeper, I want you to be letting me know when you see changes. That's really crucial. And a lot of people don't do that because this will help you to sort of rein in that money spending, especially if you have to look at it every single month.
Yeah, I think that's crucial, the numbers too, because a lot of businesses probably don't track their numbers carefully as well. You've been in business for so, so long. In your opinion, what makes a business last the test of time? Because, a lot of businesses fail within the first 5 years. So how did you last so
Yeah.
long?
I think one of the main things is, and there's a lot of gurus who'll go, oh, it's all down to profit. To me, it was passion because when I started feeling, uninspired in my business, when I was like, okay, here we go, like another day, I watched my profits plummet. So for me, finding ways to keep that passion, to keep that inspiration going, to be excited about projects that, we were doing, whether that was, in the retail store or generating classes or whatever the case may be, to find stuff to get excited about was important, because if I was excited, I was motivated. I was motivated to make those sales. I was motivated to bring that income in. It didn't feel as much as a chore. And then the second thing was really looking at what my worth was, because a lot of times we will go, well, I can't charge that. Like, I don't feel right about charging that. And I kind of created this know your worth thing where I started adding up everything that I was taking. So every year I'll add up courses, books that I bought, anything that I did that, like, kind of cost me money, programs, all of that other stuff. And I started to realize, wow, for somebody to get all of my knowledge, if I use today as an example, not only would it take them 25 years, but it would take them close to $1 million of an investment to do all of the things that I've done. And even then, they're not going to get there because they haven't had the same experiences. And I think sometimes we entrepreneurs, we forget that. We forget how much we've paid to get where we are and to get the knowledge that we have. So I think passion and remembering who you are, if I can put it quite simply, remembering how good you are the two key things that help you keep going.
And that's very fascinating. In terms of knowledge as well, can you recommend any books or mentors that have really made a massive impact on your journey so far?
Off the top of my head, the one book that I love and I hand it out to a lot of people who are my clients and stuff is a book called Profit First by Mike. I'll screw up his last name. Mike M.
Okay.
I always mess up his name. It's a
Yeah.
really, really good book around money and ideas, very simple ways to, just put like 10% aside and how you can sort of make that grow. It's a great book and it's really easy to start seeing money compile and not always feeling like you're behind the ball. And it's not these huge amounts. There's a lot of people who go, oh, you have to put 30% of all of your income aside. And a lot of people are like, listen, buddy, like the money comes into my bank and it's out the next day because I'm trying to eat. I have a family to feed or whatever. So I really found that Profit First kind of went with smaller chunks and it was easier to kind of grow that way. So I think that's the one that I usually off the top of my head is easy one to kind of say, yeah, I recommend that one all the time, besides my own, but that's self-serving.
Let's talk about your book as well. What inspired you to write the book, How to Collaborate?
It was a long journey. It was like 2 years of sort of writing it and trying to figure out exactly what I wanted. I always wanted to write a book since I was a kid. I never thought it was going to be a business book. I always thought it would be some kind of fiction or something. But when I really sat down to write it, when I was thinking back across my whole journey as an entrepreneur, was that I kept seeing all of these books on the shelf of how to make 6 figures, how to get to 7 figures, how to get to 5,000 followers. And I kept thinking, man, it has not changed since the 90s. It just felt like it was always a struggle to find somebody writing to where I was right now. What about 3 figures? What about 4 figures? Like, what happens there? And so when I sat down to write the book, I wanted the book to be that it didn't matter where you were in business, you would be able to take the steps and use it to start generating income and relationships and start working with other people to grow and get things that you needed for your own business and kind of help your community to grow. So I wrote it in mind that you could do the whole book with $0 to create a collaboration. I wanted to make it that obtainable for people. And so I really wanted to get to the basis of that because it's easy to go, oh yeah, like I've worked with all of these huge companies, but I really kept in mind, like, I remember sitting there going, but I don't know anybody who works at Coca-Cola, or I don't know anybody who works at Zoom or Calendly or any of those large companies. Like, now what? Now who do I work with? So that was really where the passion for it came out, is that I really wanted, for a very minimal cost, like under $30, I wanted somebody to be able to pick it up and be able to actually turn it into money, get their monies back, I guess, at the very least.
So what does true collaboration mean and why is it really crucial for small businesses?
I think especially today in the world that we're in, it's becoming more and more that we're missing each other.
Mm.
Everybody's kind of doing things alone as social media is becoming such a big thing. We're getting sort of more and more closed in, and it's harder and harder to reach the audience that you want to reach. So for me, collaboration is really that opportunity to be able to reach a bigger audience, but to be able to take other people along the ride with you. Because you can be a multi-million dollar company, but if everybody else around you fails, it's going to be really hard to sustain yourself. Like you need that business that's beside you to be there. We need the neighbors on either side. And whether that's brick and mortar or whether you're online, you need the next website who's next door to you to kind of be there for people to sort of find you, right? That's how neighborhoods are sort of built. But the key thing that I want people to take from collaborations is that sometimes what happens is it becomes very one-sided. And so collaborations really have to be about two people coming together and both having buy-in, both kind of putting their hands in the pot or even putting money in the pot. Sometimes that happens, but you have to both be invested to truly make it a collaboration. So, for example, if you're just paying somebody some money or you're giving them a product and they're shouting you out on their page, like that's a
Mm.
transaction, really, because they're just like, meh, they're not losing anything. So, when
Yeah.
you're trying to do a collaboration, just think, do we both have a chance to lose something? Like, you got to kind of both put your butts on the line.
Wow. And so, can you discuss other ways that we can collaborate besides sending a product out, for example? Ways that can help small businesses as well, because there's usually shout outs and there's podcasting as well, which is another good collaboration. But can you discuss any other ways that people can collaborate as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've seen it done a lot, especially event based. We see this a lot going out, swag bags and stuff like that, where people are, again, usually typically that's product makes better than paper in that. But really looking at, are there some events that you can get involved in? Are there different ways, if you want like $0 ways, are there organizations that you can be involved with as a volunteer? So your local chambers or any business networking groups, there's tons of ways that you can get in, and in doing the networking, sort of see where somebody else needs help. And if you're sitting there and someone's like, yeah, like, I really wish I knew this person, you can be like, oh, I know that person. Like, that's a moment to speak up and sort of create those connections. Because, like you said, and podcasting is a good example of that. You can go on someone's show, and all of a sudden, 2 years later, somebody's like, hey, I heard your interview and you were like, that was like 2 years ago, right? So,
Mm.
you could do it in that. You can do it in writing articles. Some people say, well, I'm not a good writer. Yeah, but is there somebody else that is really good at that you can say, hey, let's get together and let's do a monthly newsletter about the fun stuff that you can do in this town? Or even we're seeing it a lot in like Love Local initiatives where it's just business people getting together and creating a Facebook group for their community and just kind of shouting out, hey, I saw this fun thing at this place. Or, have you visited this shop? So it doesn't necessarily need to be something that costs a lot of money, but are there ways that you can help another business get recognized more? Because in turn, it will come back to you and they'll see you too, right? It's that I used to say when I had a retail store, if I didn't have it, I would figure out where they could find it. And people would always say, isn't that a bad model? Because like you're telling people to go somewhere else. And I said, yeah, but
Mm.
they're going to come to me first. So they
Mm.
always come to me and go, do you have this? No. Oh, where do I get it? Right. So although I wasn't making money off of them, maybe for that transaction, I was their first stop. And so when I started doing that in business, I realized, if you're the person that kind of goes, oh, I know a guy, everybody
The
comes to you
connector.
first. And then at some point, you're going to be like, I'm the guy.
Yeah,
That's me.
yeah. No, it's good that you're giving back. What are some of the benefits you've experienced personally from collaborations?
For me, like in my business and in the ones that I've done, I think the biggest benefit has been building relationships because I think entrepreneurship can be really lonely, especially when you're first starting out, because you are everything. You're marketing, you're HR, like you're every department. But those relationships have grown. So as I've continued to do things with the same people over and over again, and as they've grown, they were able to kind of bring me up the ladder. Like I always joke and go, oh, that's so great. Like you got so big. Like I'm just going to ride your coattails, kind
Yeah.
of on the way up. But the other thing that it's done for me is the more I do them, the more I sort of get inspired to start thinking outside of the box of my business. Because when I would go to do a collaboration, I would have an idea of how I wanted to work with somebody. I'd love to do this idea with you or create this event with you. What do you think? What are your thoughts? And I would always really intently listen to what that person thought of either me or my business, because it was always intriguing to go, really, like, that's what you think I'm super good at? Because typically what your superpower is something that you're like, that's not my superpower. I just do that. That's like super easy, right? So for me, it was really getting an eye opener of seeing my business from somebody else's point of view. And I think that's always really important because it kind of, again, spurred that passion to be like, oh, I didn't think you thought that was cool. Like, I thought that was just like a stupid little thing I did. All right, I'm going to do more of that. Thank you so much. So
Mm.
it was sort of like a advertising and marketing campaign and, building those relationships. And now the more I do it with other clients, it's the joy of watching people grow and not feeling alone anymore and having that business friendship where you're both kind of seeing that success together. It's so much more fun to celebrate with someone else than yourself, right? We don't do it. And I'm sure you have a success in your business. And if it's just you doing it, you're like, that event worked great. It was well, yay. And you're on to the next thing, right? Whereas I find in a collaboration, I take the time to sit with them. What worked? What didn't work? We kind of have little closing out meetings and stuff. And then it's more exciting because you're like, we did awesome, right? It's more celebratory. And we need that in business.
Yeah, that's true. And business can be really, really lonely as well. It's like what you mentioned as well, because, sometimes you're doing it all alone. So having that support and community is great as well. Can we talk about some of the challenges that you've had in businesses? Because you've juggled multiple different businesses while parenting as well. And before the conversation, you talked about how you've had to lead a team of 30 before as well, and the challenges there versus not leading so many people. So can you talk a little bit about that as well?
Well, running businesses while parenting was interesting for sure. My son learned to walk in a facility. Like, it wasn't at home like most people. I had that worry when he was growing up that I was like, either he's going to have the most amazing work ethic out of anybody, or he's going to be the laziest person because he's essentially worked since the day he was born. I trudged him to work with me. I think one of the biggest challenges in parenting and owning a business was managing my time and really being able to shut it off at the end of the night. And that was really
Um,
hard. And there is no such thing as work-life balance. It's never even. So it was just really over the years learning to be okay with the fact that it was going to change. Sometimes the business was getting 90%, my family was only getting 10. When I realized that, I would be like, okay, now it's time to sort of flip the scale a little bit. So really being conscious of that, and it didn't always work sometimes. Sometimes it was the family going, "What do you look like?" Like, we haven't seen
mm,
you, kind of for weeks. I think the other thing too is, we were talking about before we went on air, is I have so many people who are like, "Oh, I would have loved to been where you are and have all of these employees." And I was like, "Hang on, let me demystify that a little bit for you." Because one of the hardest things for me in that aspect was the stress that I didn't know was going to be there, right? Because I thought, oh, if I have all these employees and I'm able to pay them, that's super exciting. But when times got tough, I didn't have my life to think about or my family's. I had 30 families to think about, 30 lives that were going to be affected. And I didn't realize the amount of stress that was going to put on me. And
mm.
now the older I get in life, I'm like, I don't want to do that again because it was really, really hard. And when times were good, times were good. But there's always ebbs and flows in business. So for me, the biggest thing was learning that success will change and should change. Your view of success can change, and it doesn't have to equal dollars. Like, when I first started out in business, money, that was how I deemed success, right? That was my indicator. When I started a family, time, how much time I
Mm.
had to spend with them, that was my indication that I was successful. And now my son's graduating from high school this year. And now it's, how much can I give back? Because I'm sort of at that time. So it's interesting to see how my idea of success has changed, but I'm glad it did. I'm glad I'm not just chasing the same thing. Again, never needing to know what I want to be when I grow up.
Yeah, I think that's fascinating because every person that I interview, I try to ask them, how do you personally define success? And it changes a lot to different cycles. One that resonated with me the most is when someone said, when you can find fulfillment in like the multiple facets, like your health, the money part, your family, like a balance as well. So, but you've gone through different stages, which is fascinating. And having 30 different employees, I can't imagine. I'm not at that stage, but it is fascinating. And I hope one day I can grow to that. But like you said, you've got to be really aware of all the stress that comes with it as well. So now you
Mhm.
don't have that. I think with AI tools as well, it just helps people become more productive. I'm a big advocate for AI and productivity as well. Can you give any advice for entrepreneurs facing adversity and setbacks in their entrepreneurial journey?
It's the hardest one, I think, for me to do and the one I have to do the most often, but it's asking for help because we don't want to, right? Because asking for help means you have to say that either you're not good at something or you can't do something for whatever the reason is. But when I was the deepest kind of in a hole and sort of hitting rock bottom, I had no choice but to ask for help. It was that or die. Like it was like either that, like somebody's got to find me in this well that I've dug myself.
How did you get into that rock bottom moment? Can you elaborate it? I'm curious to know.
I think for me, it was the stress. I was getting really stressed and overwhelmed. I had way too many things in the fire, thinking that I was the only one that could do it and that I had to do it. Like I could just do it faster and easier. So, like, I'll just do it. And trying
Yeah.
to strive for that work life balance. I was trying to get the scales even on both sides. So, I was trying to be this superior boss who had everybody's best interest and was listening and motivating everybody, trying to be 100% there for my clients and trying to be like a super mom. And it just didn't work. It just resulted in my health failing miraculously and still trying to keep a smile on my face. And it wasn't until I broke. I remember sitting at a meeting and breaking. I'm just starting to cry because I couldn't hold it in anymore. And all of these people sitting around a table and every single one of them going, "Oh my God, why didn't you tell us? Like we would have helped." Like, oh my God, like, and just seeing the relationships that I had made come together and go, "We're going to help you. Oh my God, I can help you out of this. I'm awesome at that. Like, I know how to do that." Like, just the troops kind of rallied. And I
Mm.
realized, like, oh my God, why didn't I ask for help sooner? Because
Yeah.
people want to help. Right.
Yeah.
And if they know exactly what you need, it's even easier for them. Right. And we see it all the time. If you have a family member who is having a health crisis or God forbid a family member dies, like, we're going to bring them food. We're going to rally around. Like we want to help and everybody wants to help. But if you don't ask, they don't think you need it. So
Mm.
admitting that what it also did in hindsight, now this was only in hindsight, but in hindsight, I realized that it was me saying my story and my struggles and asking for help opened the door for other people to admit it too. So there was a lot of other people that said, "Oh my God, thank God you said that. Like, I have been struggling too. Like, I don't know how to do this. Like, I don't know how to be all of these people." And it was amazing to me how many other people were feeling the same, but were hiding it as well. So from that point, I realized I'm going to be the person who says it. And if I get mud on my face, I get mud on my face. But if one person goes, "Oh, thank God, like it's not just me," I wanna be
Yes.
that person for them. For me, getting in the hole was not listening to what was going on. I wasn't paying attention. I thought, "It'll pass. I can do
Mm.
it. I just need to sleep more."
Yeah. I can definitely relate to that, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs can too, especially mums as well, because, you have to run a business, you have to try to be a super mom as well, and then you got all the activities. That's how what I personally feel, so it's great that you're being authentic and sharing that too as well. So, can we talk about your branding and, your podcasting, building up your personal brand as well? What drove you to start your podcast, Fox Talks Business?
It was a weird start. So I had a retail craft store, and I was just done with customer service. So that's why I decided to sell it. I didn't have a filter anymore that you're supposed to have. And I was trying to figure out what is my next step going to be because we still had two other businesses that were running. So I was very fortunate to be in a situation where I could take a little bit of time. I wasn't just jumping from one thing to the other. I had a little bit of time. And so I was talking to my son at the time and I was like, what do you think mom should do? And he was like, whatever it is, you should do something that involves talking because you do that a
Yeah.
lot. And so I was like, maybe I should start a podcast. That's a great idea. I thought, I'll just do it for a couple of months and we'll kind of see where it goes. And I honestly thought nothing was going to come of it, right? Because how much could I have to say? Really. And when I sort of got into the podcast world and I started interviewing people and I realized like I can talk to people around the world. Like I can have conversations with people in Australia. Like this is
Mm.
just crazy. This was never a thing. It became really exciting and really motivational for me. I kind of went through this guilty phase for a little bit that I was like, I feel like I'm getting more out of doing the podcast than any listener is. Because, of course, you get the connection with the people
Yeah.
that you're interviewing. You get
Yeah.
the after interview that nobody gets to hear, where you ask those personal questions and stuff. And so, as it started going, and I decided to do it longer and longer because I was gaining stuff out of it. And then it just kind of sort of morphed into its own thing. And I thought, I really like doing this. I just really didn't want to stop. And I started building relationships and I started getting clients when I was going on other people's show. And I thought, wow, I get to have a conversation, just chat with somebody, and then people are going to come to me. I'd rather do that than marketing.
Yeah, it is a different form of marketing. And I agree. I love podcasting because I do it for my own reasons because I want to learn, but I share it with the world as well. And you get to build a community too. So it has been a short journey, but I feel you. I
Yeah.
love doing the podcasting thing. So
I think the listeners are so great too because it gives you sort of that connection. And so some of the questions that they would ask or pose, sometimes it was something that I was like, I want to know that too. And sometimes it was like, I know the answer to that. I can help them out. So it was inspiring. Yeah.
I think you learn a lot through podcasting as well. And I personally love listening to podcasts as well. So it's a great vehicle to get your branding out. Can we talk about personal branding and why it's important for entrepreneurs? What's your opinion on that? Because now I am seeing a lot of business owners doing their own personal branding and being thought leaders. And especially in this day and age as well, with the attention, like everyone's fighting for attention. What are your thoughts on authentic personal branding for entrepreneurs?
It's a hard thing to do. It truly, truly is. And I spent a lot of years hiding what my true personality is. I'm a very outspoken, say it as it is, don't really have much filters. I was always told when I was young that I was like a bit much. I always kind of had that personality. But what I realized is that's what truly was attracting people to me. So the more I hid myself, the more I tried to be who I thought everybody wanted me to be, dressing in business suits and attire and always presenting this perfection or somebody who has everything all together and knows all of the answers. It became very stressful and very difficult. It wasn't as easy when I just went, why? It's so hard to keep that persona up. It's like trying to be an actor 24/7 and just
Mm.
constantly be in this role. And I still to this day struggle sometimes. I put things out and I'm like, ooh, maybe that wasn't a good thing to put out. Maybe I shouldn't have. It's funny because every time I put something that I'm like, oh, maybe that was inappropriate or that didn't really match my brand, but I thought it was funny. That's always the thing that seems to go. Like it's always the
Yeah.
thing that people seem to latch onto. And so with sort of playing around with that a little bit and having fun with it, I realized I'm just going to say what I say because I don't think you are ever going to get away from people not liking what you have to say or disagreeing with you. It doesn't matter. I had put a post out, just a fun, silly post about having a double chin. I think it's up to 28,000 views. Like it had nothing to do with my business. But watching the comments was really, really interesting to me because people like somebody said I sold them fentanyl at the local Walmart. I'm like, what? It was just, it's such a crazy world out there. But I
Yeah.
thought, do you know, that's one person, but the amount of people that were like, oh my God, I needed that laugh today, or thank you, that was so funny, or like, my chin bothers me too. Like, I was just like, there's so much more connection if I just put something that I think is funny out there and just roll with it. And I'm going to stop worrying about the people that don't like me or that don't like what I have to say. And I'm going to start concentrating on the people that need to hear that, or that are like, thank you. This is what I needed. Because I've just learned there's always going to be people that don't like me. And that's okay. They don't have to. You have to like you. And that's what really all that matters. You and your mom. That's what I always say. I'll call my mom and go, do you still like me? And she's like, yeah, I'm like, perfect.
No, that is so beautifully spoken, because being authentic in today's world, there's going to be a lot of AI, for example. I had a video that went viral and everyone's saying it's fake, 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 fake. AI is happening more and more. So authenticity and being yourself, I think it's the way to go, because you definitely going to resonate with more people. And I listened to Layla Homozy, and she says, she's one of my favorite podcasters, because she says it how it is. And that's what I like too, because your honesty, it comes through. And she also said that you're going to have to expect the bad with the good. So when you're growing
Yeah.
and building your brand, there's going to be so much people with bad comments and whatnot too. So she expects it. You can't have one without the other. So I feel like authenticity definitely
Yeah.
helps. What advice would you recommend for people building their own brand as well?
I think really sitting and deciding like what parts of you do you want to share? Because you don't have to share everything. I know people think being authentic means you share everything. There's a lot of things that I don't share. I've stopped sharing over things about my son or my family or whatever. So really kind of just deciding and coming into terms like this is what I'm willing to give. This is what I'm willing to share about myself. And I think the other thing is that we need to stop using the word brave for normal stuff. Because I had somebody say to me, oh, you did this post the other day and you didn't have any makeup on. I thought that was really brave. And I'm like, brave? It's my face. Like, you think,
Yeah.
what? It's my face. I didn't do anything. It just grew like that. Like, I just thought
Yeah.
it was like a very weird, and I knew they were meaning it very kindly and everything. But I just sort
Mm.
of said, I think it's brave for me to put makeup and go out. And I think it's brave for people who like shapeshift their face and go out. Like, it's just such a weird world.
Yeah.
So I think decide for yourself, what do you want to share? And then share it. If you have an idea or a thought, I've learned over the years, those times that I'm sitting there and I'm like, I should say this, I should do a story about this, or I should do a reel about this. I always do them now. I do them right away because those are the ones that I will get every single time. There will be at least 5 to 10 people that come back and say, thank you, I needed to hear that today. Or thank you, I needed that laugh today. I think that we need to stop over analyzing our thoughts and just going, somebody somewhere needs to hear this. I'm going to put it out.
Nice. I like that. Tell me, what excites you about the future? What's ahead?
Oh, well, for me, on a personal level, summer is coming. I'm in Canada. So I'm in the west coast of Canada. So I'm getting really, really excited for that. For the business as well. When COVID happened, of course, we all started working at home. My team is starting to build their family. A lot of them are younger than I am. So they've all started building their families. And so now we're starting to morph into a different look where they're able to work remotely. We're able to kind of release them into the wild and just give them projects to kind of go with and fail and try again. For me, that's really exciting to kind of watch that evolution of our team and how they're kind of growing into their own is really exciting to see. On a personal level, I have a collab club, which is a year-long program. I take people through tearing down, building up their business again. We talk about the book, how to create collaborations throughout the whole year. And then they have the coaching that goes along with that. And that sets my heart on fire to watch these people get so motivated and inspired and help each other and connect with each other and watch them build their own little communities and groups. And it just warms my heart. If I could do that till the day I die, I would be the happiest, most successful person. I say that now. Success might change later, but for now, that's what it is.
Perfect. Guys, if you've been enjoying this conversation so far, please be sure to hit the like and subscribe button. Or if you're listening on podcasts, please do me a favor and hit the follow button. It really does help the channel. Finally, where can people find you?
The easiest place to find me is that you can just head to my website, which is foxtalksbusiness.com. It'll have all of the links and areas that you can find me. And I do encourage people, please leave a like, leave a comment. It so helps podcasters. And Linda, you are doing such an amazing job. I'm love watching what you're doing and the different guests that you're having on and just watching your podcast grow. I'm honored that you had me on and I got to be a
Thank
part of
you.
it. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your time, Tanya. It's been a pleasure.